everybody. Happy Saturday. Welcome back to our Saturday Anything Goes. Now, last week we worked with some beautiful DSP called Mosaic Mood. And I really enjoyed working with it, but we haven't had a chance to do anything with the stamp set. And I thought today would be a good day for that. Plus, I wanted to show you a brand new technique which I call tiling. There may be another name for it, but it's basically where you stamp an image and then you cut it up into little squares and you reassemble it with some darker cardstock underneath it to make it look like a mosaic tile. So this is perfect for that, right? We're going to be using the main image, which will be this weeping willow tree. Our color palette, we're straying a little bit away from the colors in the DSP. It uses mint macaron and soft suede, so we are going to continue with those. But instead of crushed curry, we're going to use So Saffron. It's a bit of a more springy color than the crushed curry. And also we'll be using a new in color, which is our Rococo Rose. And our cardstock is also going to be those colors. We'll pull in just a little bit of the DSP for a border, but basically this is all about the stamp set. So let me get everything set up here and we'll get started. I did earlier this week do a card using the Good Morning Magnolia that demonstrates that tiling effect as well. And as you can see, it's just so pretty. All right. I'll bring in our goodies here that we're going to be using. And as I mentioned, our cardstock, we're going to have a card base of mint macaron. We will do a matte Rococo Rose, and you'll see it just leaves a tiny border of the mint macaron on it. And then I have soft suede. Actually, I think this is early espresso. The soft suede was a little light, so I changed it up on the matte piece for the early espresso. And that's what we're going to lay our cut up tiles on. And then I also have a piece of Whisper White we'll use for stamping. As far as measurements, our Whisper White is, it is 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. So the mattes are going to be, I mean, just a tiny bit larger than that. But you'll see as we go together what it all looks like. Our early espresso is a 4 by 4. And then our Rococo Rose is going to be a 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, I believe. But let's go ahead. I have all of the stamps already mounted. Hello, Roz. Thanks for joining. And these are the ones we're going to use. So our tree base is here. We'll stamp that in soft suede. And then we have the beautiful, turn it over, you could probably see it better, leaves. And we're going to stamp this not just once. We're going to end up stamping it 3 different times. That will help us pull in all of the colors in our color palette today. First one I'm going to do, though, is our tree base, because that really lines things up for me. So we'll just ink that up. And you'll notice I don't have my stamp on the block in the right position. I was watching a video, and the person who was narrating it talked all about how you end up looking at the edges of the block if you mount things straight. So she said mount them cattywampus, and that forces you to look at the stamp itself, and you get a much cleaner image with it. So I want that to be lower central. And that's all we'll be using that for the moment. Then I'll bring in the mint macaron. I love this color. And we'll ink that up. And this I'm also going to do central. And I'm trying to line it up with the top of the tree trunk or tree base, but it doesn't matter if you're off, because remember, this is more an artistic tree than a real life tree. So there's our mint macaron, pretty already, right? And you can see my tree trunk is not lined up exactly, but I'm not worried about that because we've got 2 more stampings to do. So next, I will go with our Rococo Rose. This is a beautiful springy color. Now, I know weeping willows are green. You might have different shades of green with a little bit of yellow, but I wanted to bring some of this beautiful Rococo Rose in. I just thought it looked pretty. Reminds me of blossoms. So what I'm doing, I don't want it to be exactly where I stamped previously. So if I did this, it would be exactly there. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to offset it a bit. Just like that. Oh, look how pretty, pretty, pretty that is. And then my last color is the So Saffron. This is just such a beautiful springtime yellow. We'll ink that up. And I went more towards the left with that one. Here I'm leaning more towards the right. And that just gives me a very, very full weeping willow tree. And I think that the mint macaron, the Rococo Rose, and the So Saffron are very complementary to each other. So let us put that away, and we'll save our sentiment for a little bit later, because what we want to do now is cut this up. Because I started out with a piece of Whisper White that is 3 3/4, I am going to cut this into 3 sections to start with. So each section will be, what did I say? I'm going to make mine 1 1/4. So my first one is going to be 1 1/4, and I'm actually lining it up with the 1 1/4 over on this side. So that's 1. Now I'll do my 1 1/4 right here for our second panel, and that leaves us with 3. Now we could tile like that, and it would look pretty. It's more like what's called a triptych if you're hanging pictures on or paintings on a wall that are you are splitting up one big image. But we're not going to stop there. We are going to turn this, and again, each one of these tiles or squares is going to be 1 1/4 inches. And as I cut them, I am laying them out so that I know what goes with what. So we've got our first one done. Now we'll move on to our middle plank. And I'm using that 1 1/4 for each. Just like that. And it's easy to tell which tile is on the top and which is on the bottom because you have a white space there. The middle tiles all tend to have color on them. All right, here's our last panel that we are going to cut into tiles. So this goes really pretty fast. And that's all the cutting that we're going to do. Hi, Jean. All right, so we'll bring these in, and now's when the fun begins. As I mentioned, I have a regular card-based top folding of mint macaron. I cut my Rococo Rose to be 1/8 of an inch smaller than that. And that's why we only have this little bitty border. I would, if you want a larger border than that, what I would do is take out the middle part and just use the mat for the image. And that will allow you to have more. But I liked it that way. So we'll keep our soft suede mat, and now comes the fun. We get to see if Linda can line things up straight. I'm using my liquid glue because I will probably have to squidge this around. And pardon my head if it gets in the way. Trying to make sure I stay in camera. And I'm going to do one row at a time because I know that it's going to be pretty thin lines that you see between them. And that's about all the space we'll have. But as you can see, as I get this last one for that panel, you've got just enough soft suede all the way around to where it really makes it pop. So we'll move on to our center panel. And now that I've got one laid down, I can use that as my guide. And you know, I think I'm going to do the top right one next, just to be sure I'm staying with the right amount of the mat showing. And if we get a little too much, we can always cut the mat down. We might have to do that on here, but I like it. It's kind of like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, but you know where all the pieces go. So what are y'all doing for fun today? It's a nice, peaceful, relaxing Saturday. We had doctor's appointments every day this week, so it's really nice to not have to go anywhere. All right, last piece. And there we go. Now I could cut a little sliver off here, but you know, it doesn't really bother me right now. I think I'm going to leave it like that. So this is going to go together with, I'm going to glue this down. And then I'm not popping anything up because there is enough depth on this. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. So I really didn't think I needed to pop anything up. You know, let me see if I can take just a tiny sliver off that right side. I don't cut very straight, but we'll give it a whirl. As long as I don't cut too much. Whew, much better. All right. I think what I'll do is glue this to the Rococo Rose mat next. I always like to save that card base for the last, just in case I mess up on one of my other layers. But as I mentioned, you're just going to get a nice border all the way around, just like that. Now we can go ahead and glue this down. Make sure it opens the right way. Because this is that one I definitely don't want to have to do all over again. Squidge that down just a tad, and there we go. All right, so far so good. Now we have quite a bit of the Rococo Rose showing down here, but that was something I did on purpose because I did bring in just a little bit of the DSP. I thought that would look really nice down there. So this is one of those border patterns. And I chose the early espresso, the soft suede and the mint macaron to continue the colors that are already on our card. And again, this is getting glued down, no dimensionals. And we'll put it right about there. All right, now let's talk about our sentiment. This is a pretty busy piece, so I didn't want a big sentiment. I grabbed the hello from Good Morning Magnolia, and that's what we're going to use. Now, on my previous card, I was able to put it right there in that right bottom tile, and I could probably do that here, but I think I'd rather do the sentiment down here. So I brought in the smallest of our stitched rectangles, and let me get some Whisper White here. And let's see, what color do we want to stamp our sentiment in? We could do mint macaron, and that would be pretty. So we'd start with mint macaron in the card base and end with it. We could do the soft suede, but I think it's got enough brown in it between the matte and the border. The So Saffron is going to be too light. And we could also do Rococo Rose because we have a lot of that showing through. I think I'm going to stick with the mint macaron though. We'll stamp it and see how it looks. And again, I have mounted it cattywampus, which makes me look at the stamp itself rather than the edges of my block. And it's stamped beautifully. I've got my Big Shot sitting right to the right off camera, and it may make the camera shake a little bit, but it'll only be for a moment. So give myself plenty of that. Remember, you never want to put your squares or rectangles straight through. It's very hard on the plates and the roller. So when I put it on, I'm going to put it on at an angle. Just make sure that I have it lined up the way I want it. Like that. Oh, down just a little bit more. Make it even. All right. Now hopefully I can send this through without it repositioning. Don't you hate that when you think you have everything lined up, only to find that it didn't cut straight. All right, fingers crossed. Ah, it did great. Okay, that's all the die cutting that I'm doing with this card. Now, if you don't have a Big Shot, you can just cut it out on your paper trimmer and use it that way. So I think that we're going to put it right down here, but the white looks a little stark. So I'm thinking some sponging is in order. And let's sponge it with, ooh, what should we do? The Rococo Rose or the So Saffron? I have a lot of Rococo Rose sitting behind it. Let's try our So Saffron. I want a little bit more yellow in here. I've got my sponge daubers put away, so I didn't pull them out for this. I may wish that I had, but I'm just using a sponge, and I think this will be fine. Yep, working like a champ. Just giving me that little extra. I like that. See if you can see that. Helps it stand out just a little bit. And we'll probably put a little embellishment on it as well, since there's so much white space. But I'm going to put that right below my bottom center tile. Now, do I want to pop that up? Nope, I don't think so. Because our DSP is glossy, you will want to use a very strong adhesive. Either your liquid glue or Terran tape would be fine. I'm going to stick with my liquid glue. And I didn't carry it all the way to the top and bottom edges here, because those aren't actually sitting on that border. Okay. So there's our card. Let's pull out our goodies and see what we want to use for embellishments. So we've got pretty silver and gold pearls, epoxy dots that I could color, but I think I ordered the in color enamel dots. I did. So there's a Rococo Rose right there. We could definitely use those. And I really do like them. Yep, I think that's what we're going to do. We'll pull a couple of those in. Or I should say a couple, 3, because you know me. Got to do odd numbers. All right, where is my... There it is. I'm going to use my take your pick tool for this. It's got that wonderful little spatula end, which makes it easier to pick up your enamel dots. So let's do one down here. Move that down just a squidge more. And then let's do a couple more. Come on, get under it. Up here. So we'll do one there. And we'll do one here. And that forms our little triangle. All right, so what do you guys think? That is our finished card. And as you saw, it really doesn't take a lot of time. Once you stamp the image, you use your trimmer to quickly cut it into sections, and then just apply those, glue those down to your mat. And then the rest of it goes together very, very easily. Roz, 2 of your grandkids slept over last night. How much fun must that have been? I wish I lived closer to mine. Although they're all pretty much grown by now. I think the youngest one just turned 13, so she's officially a teenager now. All right. Well, that's what I wanted to show you today. Oh, you're welcome, Jean, for that tip. I know I had never heard of it easier, but you know what? Ever since I started doing it, my images are stamping much straighter. So I really do like that. Hi, Amy. All right. Well, I will, let me bring out, where's the other one? I wanted to do them side by side for you, but of course I can't find it now. So I guess we won't. We'll just use this one. Let me know if you have any questions at all on how to do the titling technique is what I'm calling it. It's probably out there on YouTube or Pinterest called something else. And if you find out what it is, leave me a comment. But it's very easy to do, and I hope you will give it a try. Any large image will work for this purpose. The key is that your Whisper White needs to be the, what I said was 3 3/4 to give you even tiles going across. Thanks, Roz. All right, well, I will let you get back to your Saturday, and I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you again next Saturday. Toodles!